Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on a profoundly mystical journey right into the human psyche. We're going to explore a masterful piece of literature that really asks us to look at the shadows of the past, the sheer weight of survival, and that incredibly thin, blurry line between reality and the supernatural. Our guide for this journey is Dr. Solomon Margolin, a man who is about to take a snowy taxi ride that might just cross the boundaries of life and death. Even the survivors carry death in their hearts. I want you to just let that haunting line sink in for a second. This is absolutely the thematic anchor for everything we're about to uncover. We aren't looking at the aftermath of the Holocaust through a dry history textbook here. We're looking at it through the unresolved, messy trauma of those who physically escaped the devastation, but whose souls are still tethered to a world that was violently erased. It's a powerful reminder of why diving into this kind of literature matters so much. It forces us to confront the invisible scars of history. Now, the mastermind behind this incredible story is Isaac Bashevis Singer. Born in Poland into a family of rabbis, Singer emigrated to the United States back in 1935. And what's just so fascinating about him is his absolute mastery in blending the mundane, everyday realities of life with these deep, supernatural undercurrents. He wrote almost entirely in Yiddish, and in doing so, he brought the rich, lost world of Eastern European Jewry right onto the modern, sprawling streets of New York City. And honestly, his profound ability to capture these complexities did not go unnoticed. Singer was actually awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1978, which really establishes the incredible literary weight of the text we're exploring today. We're looking at the work of a true master, someone who uses fiction to ask the absolute hardest, most unanswerable questions about existence. Part 1. Meet Dr. Solomon Margolin. Okay, let's dive right into this. Our protagonist opens the story dreading something incredibly ordinary, attending a wedding on a Sunday. He's exhausted, he's on a strict, fat-free diet, and to him, a wedding feast out in the wilds of Brownsville sounds like a literal feast of poisons. But as you'll see, his reluctance goes so much deeper than just physical tiredness. There is this stark, almost painful contrast to Dr. Margolin. On the surface, he is a massive success. He's got a wealthy medical practice on West End Avenue, he's highly respected in Jewish academic circles, and he's tall, handsome, often passing for an Anglo-Saxon. But inwardly, he feels like an absolute failure. He suffers from hypochondria, the fear of death just haunts his dreams, and the horrors of Hitler's carnage have entirely rooted out his faith in humanity. He secretly despises the wealthy matrons, coming to him with their petty little ills while millions were murdered. And that internal sense of failure makes total sense when you look at the trajectory of his life. At just 11 years old, he was an acclaimed Talmud prodigy. By 17, he attempted a translation of Spinoza's Ethics from Latin into Hebrew, completely self-taught in algebra and geometry. Literally, everyone predicted he'd be a genius. Yet, here in the present day, despite all his wealth, he feels like he squandered those brilliant early talents, wandering from country to country, ultimately ending up as a disillusioned doctor in New York. The potential of his youth just feels utterly wasted to him. Part 2. The Weight of Survival. Margolin is carrying an incredibly heavy burden here. A complex, deeply painful relationship with his past, and a real discomfort with his assimilation into American life. He's a man caught between a world that no longer exists and a world he stubbornly refuses to fully accept. His alienation is profound. He absolutely despises what he sees as the distorted customs of American Judaism. The anglicized Yiddish, the ear-splitting music. He's actively stopped going to the functions of his hometown society. And then there's the profound irony of his marriage. His wife Gretel is a Christian-born former German nurse. She suffered her own wartime tragedies. One brother was a Nazi who died in a Russian camp. Another was a communist shot by the Nazis. Yet, ironically enough, Gretel has become almost deeply Jewish in New York. She's joining Hadassah and lamenting the Nazi catastrophe, all while Margolin is actively pulling away. Now, a quick note on the Senchaminers. These are people from Margolin's hometown of Senchamin in Poland. This town was utterly destroyed by the Nazis. His entire family was tortured, burned, and gassed there. This is the tragic foundation underlying his reluctance to attend this wedding. Tonight, that hall is going to be filled with Senchaminers, ghosts of his past, fellow survivors who will eagerly slap him on the back and inadvertently remind him of everything he's lost. Part 3. A Surreal Taxi Ride. So, loaded up with all of this psychological baggage, Margolin puts on his coat and hails a cab. But what starts as a simple, everyday commute to Brooklyn rapidly shifts into this surreal, atmospheric descent. As the taxi moves through the heavy snow into these unfamiliar, dark streets, Margolin's grounded reality really begins to slip away. The atmosphere just becomes overwhelmingly vivid. Listen to this. The New York streets sprawled out, wet, dirty, impenetrably dark, plunging away somewhere into the unknown toward a cosmic destination. The whole pacing of the story completely changes here. The taxi crossing the East River under a glowing red sky feels like a mythical bridge between the living world and the unknown. He's not just going to Brownsville anymore. It feels like he's heading toward a cosmic wedding. Sitting in the back of this silent cab, enveloped in this dark, wintry mood, Margolin's mind drifts to the deepest existential questions imaginable. Was immortality possible? Was there such a thing as the soul? He thinks of his pious uncles being forced to dig their own graves. He asks why God would even create a Hitler or a Stalin. The sheer tragedy of the 20th century weighs so heavily on him in that moment, and he concludes that all the arguments for or against the soul just aren't worth a pinch of dust. So the crucial point is that despite these deep, agonizing existential doubts, Margolin clings to one single anchor, the Hippocratic Oath. He is a man of incredibly strict principles. He takes immense pride in the fact that he's never broken this vow as a physician. He's honorable to an extreme, actively avoiding careerism and hypocrisy. He holds on to his professional ethics precisely because his spiritual foundation has been so thoroughly shattered. It's literally his one remaining anchor in a totally chaotic world. Part 4. The Wedding of Ghosts. Margolin finally steps out of the dark, silent cab and into a thickly populated neighborhood. He enters a wedding hall that is about to push his fragile grip on reality to its absolute breaking point. The atmosphere inside the hall is incredibly disorienting. He's greeted outside by this glowing neon Star of David, and inside he's immediately engulfed by sentimenters. He recognizes the familiar intimacy of the crowd, yet the actual individuals are unrecognizable. The foggy hall is spinning like a carousel. He hasn't had a single drop to drink, but he feels entirely intoxicated. He watches the dancers whirl frantically around him, feeling as though they carry something unearthly about them, almost as if the physical space is actively mirroring his psychological unraveling. And right here is where we hit that massive thematic anchor again. He's approached by an old acquaintance who reminds him of his brilliant childhood, and immediately, this cheerful banter circles right back to the trauma of Auschwitz. The man tells him, "All of us are really dead. We were exterminated, wiped out. Even the survivors carry death in the hearts. But it's a wedding. We should be cheerful." I mean, it perfectly encapsulates the horrific duality of their existence, right? Trying to celebrate life while being entirely consumed by death. Part 5. The Impossible Reunion. Dr. Margolin stands apart from the frantic whirl of the dance floor, and this is where his physical journey ends. What begins next is a deeply ambiguous, totally supernatural encounter that changes everything. Let's move to this next moment and see how this builds, because it completely defies logic. He sees a woman he knows. Think about the impossible facts here. Razel was the great love of his youth, but they were separated, she married someone else, she was shot by the Nazis, her entire family wiped out. And yet, he walks up to her, and she is standing right before him, with her dark eyes and girlish smile adorned with the grace of sentiment. He confronts her directly, blushing like a schoolboy. She confirms she is from Sensimin. She confirms her father was Melik the watchmaker. Margolin's absolute shock and confusion are perfectly captured in his thought, if I'm not out of my mind, then I'm seeing things, because Razel is dead. She tells him she came to New York from over there. She confirms her family is dead. She confirms she was married. And yet she is here. Margolin is shaken to his very core, deciding someone must have deceived him. But the logic completely fails. And this is the absolute genius of Singer's writing. He leaves us with a paradox. Margolin asks her to leave with him, declaring it the happiest night of his life. He thinks to himself, it is almost as if the Messiah has come. So what are we supposed to take away from this? Is Margolin actually dead, having perished in that snowy taxi ride? Is this a hallucination brought on by his trauma and pure exhaustion? Or has the supernatural genuinely broken through the mundane reality of Brownsville? It's a provocative, haunting ambiguity that leaves us questioning the very nature of survival, memory, and the human soul.